got some good questions to answer. What is Champions Now going to be in my mailbox? What's going on in terms of pledging and having a thing? Well, that's great. Let's try future vision, opening the mailbox. What will it be? And the plan is for it to look physically a lot like this, which is the 3rd edition core book. At least in terms of size, weight, form factor, that kind of thing. It will, of course, be a different book entirely. It will have a different cover. It will have different, well, perhaps a little bit of retro layout, but not entirely. But what's in it? First, think of the 3rd edition rules with the tires kicked. The playtest document currently available points at thoughts along those ways. It is not in and of itself a draft of the text. The draft of the text will be a rules text, which the playtest draft is not. If you think of Champions 3rd edition and related products, 1st generation Champions, as a way to play, sometimes just implied, with some interesting contradictions here and there, different things that are clear, different things that are not so clear. Think of this as a distilled, relatively focused version of that with a particular way to play in mind. That way to play being celebration of superhero comics and the production of something that we can rightly and proudly call a superhero comic experience through play of its own. What else is in Champions Now? Another rule set. Actually, in many ways, this is very much 2 games in one taking a look at a brilliant older rules set and letting it shine, and also saying, well, with those properties, what would a new design, not really a revision at all, not even a, this is what they should have done in any way, but using a lot of the language that has developed, using a lot of play practices to say, let's sit down and see if much of the power of that design can be delivered in a different mechanical way or with mechanical tools that we now have available. Very much systemic approach, very much honoring the concepts of points and dice as we know it from the game, so that you would look at it and you would say, wow, this is totally different. And then you would say, oh my goodness, this actually really does that thing. So Champions Now is 2 games in a physical packagey thing with a beautiful cover and the various extras along the way, particularly villains that I have mentioned over there in the pledge tiers. And that's the plan. So much for the what. Now for the why. Let's say you have that very book. You have some collection of books described as 1st generation Champions. Why would you want this? Conversely, what if you don't? What if you never saw them? What if you're fine with, you've got Champions, the hero system, you have it, and there you go. And why would you want it? That makes perfectly good sense. In some ways. Let's see if I can make sense the other way. 1st generation Champions was not the hero system. It helped give rise to the hero system, even more so with products like Danger International and so forth, all of which is great. But let's take a look at Champions of that era in its way, what it delivered to game design, to the experience of play, and say, okay, what's that? And what we find, I think, is an engine for the production of play experience, character experience, outcomes, the equivalent of what you find in the best superhero comics, what you find in the best products of entertainment media of all kind, experienced right there in play. Celebrated, in fact, to an extent that I think a lot of the comics fell on their faces with. So here I'm talking about a role-playing game dedicated not just to simulating and merely celebrating what we know, but actually saying, make this. This is something you can do. This is yours. These events, these outcomes, these experiences of enjoying it, they can be done. Those features is what I'd like to bring forward in this, so that a person with those books, perhaps in the fullness of all this time, may have lost some contact with, and then can look at their own books and say, oh, wow, this is here. Maybe they'd like to play it the way that I've talked about in Champions Now, or even better, they can see that that was one way to be kicking those tires, and they, armed with these books and their old memories, perhaps their experiences, their thoughts now, can say, I can kick a few tires myself with these, which would be fantastic. They're Champions Now, if you will. What about people who are sort of taking it on faith alone right now when I say there was something back then, the golden days that only the ancients recall? No, I'm not really talking about it in that sense. I am saying that without romance, maybe a little, without much romance, there is something for you to discover, not to replace, nothing to say against any other enjoyment of the hero systems or any other system of champions that's available, but something of its own to investigate. At the very least, if one cares, to say, history kind of matters here. There was this thing the way it was. Or even to say, wow, Champions, historically and experientially, is wider, richer, than I knew, which I can't see as a bad thing. So those are my thoughts, why you might be interested in having this thing in the possession of these older rulebooks already, and why you might be interested in this thing without them.